In the last mini lecture, I offered a few reasons why the French Revolution is often considered to be the model or the template, the archetypal revolution that set the stage for dozens of revolutions since then in the modern world. In this lecture, I'd like to broaden our understanding of what revolutions have in common, and here I'm drawing especially on the work of a sociologist named Lyford Edwards, who wrote a book quite a while ago actually, in which he compared many modern revolutions, beginning with the French Revolution, and he tried to figure out what they had in common. He began by a definition. You know, we sometimes use the word revolution rather loosely. We talk about a revolution in dental hygiene. Well, that's not what Edwards is talking about. When Edwards talks about revolution, he means a situation in which power or authority or control of the state shifts from one group to another, almost always under circumstances of violence. So we're talking about a shift in power and almost always the use of violence. I say almost always because the most recent revolutions, particularly in 1989 in Europe and in the Philippines, a few years later, we saw the emergence of something called people power, large mass nonviolent movements, which resulted in the shift of authority without violence. But this is usually the case. And Edwards asked himself the question, is there a kind of natural sequence of events that we can trace in all revolutions? Obviously, the details of the Russian Revolution are going to be very different from the French, very different from the Chinese Revolution. And yet, as a sociologist shaped by the Enlightenment, interested in the deeper patterns of human behavior, Edwards suggested, yes, that there are some patterns. There's a kind of natural, inevitable sequence that can be traced. It starts, he argued, with verbal criticism of the old regime. One group is frustrated, perhaps at taxes or in unjust laws, a feeling of grievance, and they begin to express that grievance, maybe in print, maybe in public, maybe by gathering in crowds, chanting, visible demonstrations, but verbal criticism. That's the first step. At some point in every revolution, Edwards says, verbal criticism shifts to physical attacks. This is a crucial stepping up, an escalation of criticism or violence when it becomes violent, when the people who are frustrated begin to throw rocks at government authorities, and then perhaps Molotov cocktails, and then perhaps bombs, begin blowing up bridges. They begin gathering and organizing themselves for guerrilla attacks on the old regime. And that, of course, escalates the sense of crisis. And if they are successful, there is a moment in which there is an actual transfer of power, where the revolutionaries are able to defeat the traditional forces, set themselves up in power, and initiate the kind of reforms that they have promised to the people all along. So now we have a new group suddenly in power and initiates its reforms. But those people who have lost power, the old regime, the old guards, in the case of the French Revolution, the nobility and the clergy, are never going to give up their power easily. What happened in the French Revolution is that the nobility retreated, regrouped, and then there is, in most revolutions, says Edwards, a counterattack by the conservatives. That counterattack then fuels what he calls a radical stage, in which the revolutionaries are fearful that they're going to lose the gains that they have made, and for a short period of time they use every means possible in the interest of protecting the revolution. This is a stage often called the Reign of Terror, in which, again, because your cause is transcendent, because you're fighting on the cause for justice and truth, everything is possible, including mass executions of your enemies or people who are suspected of being your enemies. At a certain stage, people get tired of that, and there is a swing back to the center. You can't support or sustain terrorist policy very long. People get tired of revolutionaries. They long for normalcy. And at that point, the revolution begins to find an external enemy, an enemy outside, and begins to expand by focusing on an external